Function machines are where you start with a number and you perform a set of processes or functions on that number. Here's a simple example. We start with the number 5 and then we're going to times by 4 and then take away 2. So along the way we're going to note down the answers halfway. 5 times 4 would give us 20, and then when we take away 2 the answer would be 18. Okay, we could try it with a different number. Let's start with 6 this time. If we feed 6 into the machine, when we times it by 4 we get 24. When we take away 2, the answer at the other end would be 22. Well, let's try it with 10. 10 times 4 would give us 40, and then when we take 2 away, out the other side, we'd end up with 38. This one's slightly more challenging because we're given the answer, and what we need to find out is the number that we started with. Now, to do this, you have to follow the opposite procedure by going backwards, and every time you hit a function, you have to do the opposite. So if we're starting with an answer of 22 and we're working backwards, instead of taking 2, you have to add 2, and that will give us 24. And then instead of timesing by 4, you have to divide by 4, which means our starting number was 6. Let's check if that works. 6 times 4 is 24. And then take away 2 would give us 22. Yep, we get the same answer, so we know that we've done it correctly in reverse. Let's try this one. This time we've got an answer of 38. We don't know what our starting number is. So working backwards again, instead of taking 2, let's add 2. That gives us 40. It's useful to note down these part-way answers as you're going along. Then instead of timesing by 4, let's divide by 4, and that will give us a starting number of 10. If we were to put 10 back into that starting block there, we would get an answer of 38. This one's slightly more challenging only because there are 3 functions rather than 2. So we need to work backwards from the 50. Okay, here goes. 50, instead of timesing by 2, we're going to divide by 2. And that will give us an answer of 25, simply by halving that number. Instead of adding 10, we'll take 10, and that will give us an answer of 15. Then instead of timesing by 5, let's divide by 5, and we get a starting number of 3. Feeding that back in, let's check. 3 times 5 would give us 15. Add 10 would give us 25, and then times by 2 would give us 50. Okay, sometimes and quite often you get these in the 11 plus test where they don't actually lay it out for you, they just give it to you in the form of words. So for this one, I start with a number, I double it, I add 10, I take away 3, I get 19. What did I start with? Now to show this graphically actually helps. So I'm going to go through this with you. So my mystery numbers at the start, don't know what it is, let's put a question mark in there. I double it, so the way to write that down mathematically is times 2. I add 10, let's put in plus 10 in that next box. And then I take away 3, let's put subtract 3. I know that the answer is 19, so my job now is to work it backwards. So instead of taking 3, I'm going to add 3, and that will give me 22. Instead of adding 10, I'm going to take 10, and that will give me an answer of 12. And then instead of timesing by 2, I'm going to divide by 2, and that will give me an answer of 6. So that is my starting point. Let's just check. If we start with 6, then we times 2, we get 12. Then we add 10, we get 22. Then we take 3, we get 19. So we know that 6 is indeed the correct answer.